there was a person who saw the flood waters coming. And they said, "Oh, please God, save me from this coming flood." And a group of people came up in a pickup truck and said, "Hey, you want to ride? We're getting out of town." And he said, "Nope, God will save me. Please God, protect me, save me from this, show me a sign." The floodwaters came and had to move up to the second floor of his house. Some people came along in a boat and they said, hey, you want to get in the boat? We'll take you to safety." And the guy says, no, God's going to save me. Y'all probably heard this story before, but it's a good story. So we're going to tell it all the way to the end. And so the floodwaters kept coming. Now the guy's up on the roof. There's not much left to go. And a helicopter comes by. Would you like? Come on, we're saving from the flood. No, God's going to save me. So the guy shows up at the pearly gates, says, "What happened? Why didn't you save me?" And St. Peter says, "Well, who do you think sent the guys in the truck and the boat and the helicopter?" Now, some of that's a little not quite exactly how we see how things work, but it's a great story about prayer, because I think it's a common misunderstanding that if we pray good enough, or if I'm good enough, if we do it right, I'm going to convince someone to fix my life. And so this is week 4, as you heard, because you were probably listening during children's time, that it's our 4th week of our Tracks Through the Unity Principles. So the first one is, there's one presence and one power in the universe, God the good. Number 2, all things have the divine spark, and our lives are expressing more of that. That's what we're here to do, is express more of our divine spark. Number 3, I create my life experiences through my thoughts and actions. And number 4 is that there is a power in affirmative prayer which increases our awareness of God. So there's that old saying, if you're feeling separate from God, who moved? And I think there's a little bit, theologically, I'm not quite all the way on board with that, but it reminds me of the simple idea, and that is that God/Spirit, Force, whatever you want to call it, is everywhere present. Therefore, any separateness is our own doing. Now, this is not, okay, there's a lot of things going on in the world, and we've been taught a lot of things to keep us separate, or thinking that we're separate. And there's many that benefit from us believing that we're separate, because then they can sell us stuff, right? But here's the thing. The sun is burning and emitting light all the time, right? We know that now. They didn't know that necessarily a long time ago, but we understand that basic scientific principle. And here on Earth, we experience various amounts of light and dark every day. But that doesn't mean the sun has stopped shining, just so we can't see it. And I think this is sometimes how we feel alone without God. It's like being on the dark side of the planet, but the good news is all we have to do is remember and bring our thoughts back to rest in the one presence and one power, and bam, we've come back into the light. It's not like the wintertime here where you have to wait another 16 hours. Instantaneous. So with the 5 unity principles, the first 3 are kind of declarations of truth. One presence, we've got the divine spark, and we create our lives, right? The last 2 are kind of the how-to portion of this 5 principles. They're the tools. We like spiritual tools. And so the question is, how do we get to living those things? Well, prayer and meditation, of course. It's the tool, my favorite tool, right? And there's many ways to pray as there are people, as there ever have been people. Because we all have our own, we all come to it from a slightly different perspective. And we've spent the whole first part of this year talking about prayer. So if you want to go back and watch those talks, they're all there on the internet for you. Or you can get a CD in the bookstore. And I posted a whole paper about it a while ago on our webpage too. You can read that. But today's theme, so there's lots of tools and all that stuff is why I mentioned it. Today's theme can be boiled down to what Unity's poet laureate James Philip Freeman said, and that is sometimes the answer to prayer is not that it changes life, but that it changes you. Or, this quote from Charles Fillmore, he says, instead of supplication, prayer should be jubilant thanksgiving. This method of prayer quickens the mind miraculously and like a mighty magnet draws out the spiritual qualities that transform the whole person when he or she is given expression in mind, body, and affairs. So prayer draws us forth to be all of who we are. So when we feel gratitude for what we already have, and when we focus our thoughts on knowing the truth of our wholeness, when we affirm resolution to a situation, we are not asking for a magic wand to fix the situation, like the guy in our story at the beginning. No, this type of prayer is about transforming us and aligning us with the truth of our being. It's about seeing the guy who comes along in the pickup truck as the answer to the prayer. It's about knowing that I have a part. I have to, be part of the solution. So when we shift our perspective from being more and more in the whatever challenge or opposite. Oh, I skipped a line. That's why it didn't make sense. Let's try that again. When we shift our perspective from being more and more in the knowing of the truth of who we are, and which is divine, then whatever challenge or obstacle we see is also transformed, because there is now wisdom, strength, understanding, whatever is needed to move forward. It's amazing how obstacles change size and shrink when you stop and pray first. It's like magic, except for it's not magic because, well, it's the rule. So even though I titled today's sermon as Prayer Changes Things, I was actually, I was faking, it wasn't true, I was playing with words, because I believe that prayer changes us, and we change things. Of course, the most effective and long-lasting way to see this come true, of course, is by consistent practice. Because, as we know, when we exercise, we build muscles. Whenever we do something frequently, we get better at it, and we become able to do more and more and more. Like our backflipping, home run throwing, etc., they practice and they get better. We do the same thing with prayer. So, I've observed in many Christian traditions that to be a part of the community, you have to profess your belief, and you have to show up regularly, or you're in trouble. And tithing, of course, is very important. And of course, yes, oh yeah, by the way, you should pray. And then today marks the beginning of Ramadan. And this month, able-bodied adults of the Muslim faith are required to fast during daylight hours as a practice of faith and prayer and cleansing. Now, luckily for our local Muslims, now this is something, as soon as I saw that Ramadan was in June, I went, that doesn't sound like much fun, sunrise to sunset. But luckily for them, there is, a ruling was made. When they first made these rules, they lived in the middle, where sunrise to sunset was about the same amount no matter what time of year it was, right? But now we live up here where it's not. So anyway, so now they have a rule that they can actually go by the sunrise and sunset in Mecca. They don't have to go by the sunrise and sunset in the, if you live in the extreme latitude. So that's a good thing, because 19 hours might be a little too, not exactly what they were meaning when they put this practice in. And it's interesting to know that they are not just fasting from food and drink, but also they are supposed to refrain from violence, anger, envy, greed, lust, profane language, and gossip. I'm moved by this level of dedication. It's a little more hardcore than I'm personally at this point willing to try. And another pillar of the Muslim faith, which I think is really neat, is the Salat, which is the praying the 5 times a day facing Mecca. By the way, if you want to know, Mecca is that way. There's a website that tells you from wherever you're at. Just a smidge east of, smidge west of straight north. Just so you know. And this is another practice that keeps one in the practice of remembering the presence of God. If you have to pray 5 times a day, you never get too far away from remembering the truth, right? And many other faith traditions have practices as well. And of course, I'm not going to go over the prayer practices of all of them because we'd be here all day. It's nice out. So in unity, we have no such requirements because we emphasize that you have free will and that you have to find your own way. There's no ongoing requirements of membership. Unity is and always has been a positive, practical, spiritual practice. And so these teachings are here to enrich your life and to the extent that you use them. And so I say, let's use them. Just saying. If each of us gave 1% of our day to our spiritual practice, do you know that's only 15 minutes? 1%. Now there are probably plenty of much less productive ways that you use 15 minutes of your day. And I am not saying that I am not one of those people who have plenty of unproductive ways to use 15 minutes. But I also make sure that at least, some of those times are also used for spiritual practice because I believe that it's important. I've seen the proof that it's important and that it changes me and it's changed my life and continues to do so. And I also have known people personally who have also made those types of long-term commitments in their life and seen the difference in who they are and how they show up in the world. And I want more of that. And I know that if I want more of that, then, well, I've got to sit my butt down and get all the distractions away and do the work. So we were talking in one of the classes a while back about the practice of praying 5 times daily that the Muslims do. And I thought that was something really powerful and interesting. And I was like, well, what if we paused 5 times a day to reaffirm and acknowledge our oneness and with all that there is? What if we paused to let go of whatever hiccups or irritations had bugged us today up to that point and remembered the bigger capital T truth? Now, I cannot compel you to enter into a prayer practice by telling you to go into hell if you don't, because that's not how we roll. And I can't tell you have to do it because otherwise you'll be socially ostracized. Because we also don't roll like that. But here's what I can tell you. As metaphysics teacher Paul Hasselbeck wrote, the point of prayer is not so much about the goodies we get, but the goodness we realize we are. We do spiritual practice so that we can become more and more of the goodness that we truly are. And I don't know about you, but I'm all about being a positive change agent in the world, and I believe that prayer is an important part of that process. So, we've made it to the homework portion of our talk this morning. Can you guess what it's going to be about? So this is it, your challenge for the day, or for the week, or for your lifetime. So it's a 2-part, you get choices. Of course you get choices, you always have the choice, duh. Okay, anyway, so, option 1, pause for conscious prayer 5 times a day. It can be as quick as a little affirmation, or sit down for 5 minutes, or 3 minutes of meditation, whatever. So 5 times a day. Your other option that I suggest is to take 1%. Give 1% to your spiritual practice. 15 minutes a day for prayer and meditation. Just do it. I don't care about the excuses, just do it. So, if you already do this, take it deeper. Add some more. 2% isn't going to hurt anybody. And if you don't know what to pray, that's one of your hiccups, read the daily word. Grab a daily word and read that. If you don't want to read the same daily word 5 times a day, okay, that's fine. Guess what? There are, I don't know if you knew, but this room right here, you go through the office, this is the library. And in the library, there are sheets from Silent Unity prayer services. And they have all sorts of great prayers on there. You can grab a handful of them. There's a whole bunch of different months. Just grab some of those. There's also old daily words in there. You can feel free to take one of those. And then you have all sorts of prayer material to work with. Actually, after service, we'll bring those baskets out here. So just grab some of those and try those out. And let that be, just read pieces of some of that 5 times a day. Easy peasy. See what happens. Like an experiment. So no, you don't have to do this. There's nothing that's going to make you do it. I can't make you do it. But wouldn't it be neat to find out what would happen if you did? What would happen if we all did? 5 times a day or 15 minutes. It's easy. Change your life, change the world.